Hey everybody, this is another version of Forgotten Megalith, Sacred Sites, and today an added Resurrection Miracles. Now that is the exact replica of the house that Don Bosco was born in. I've done extensive research on that, but behind this, in a wooded area that really nobody goes in, we see this little, sort of just like a bunch of rocks, looks like they could be just thrown there. But if you look closer, there's more to these rocks. I think this was one time a prehistoric sacred area right here. It's just been tampered with over time. Now, I was doing a little walkthrough here, and you can see at one time, this might have been some sort of structure here. You can see some of them are like standing stones here, all put together. Morning, Angel Fire. This looked like it was some structure at one time. Now, when we get closer, right here, this looks like nothing, right? Just looks like just a bunch of rocks thrown together. But when we look closer, look at this area here. Now, those look like ancient prehistoric engravings to me. And if you look closer, it looks like Orion. You could see the archer with the arrow out. It looks like the constellation Orion. And it was, you see the head of the archer, the body, the legs, the arrow, and then the box that's associated with Orion too. This looks like the Orion constellation. And it almost looks like there was a little bit of an altar where blood could be poured in, or some sort of liquid could be poured in here. It would stay there and drip down the sides, maybe even. I mean, these are ancient stones, prehistoric possibly. And this does look like the mark of Orion. You can see even the top here. This all looks like a part of Orion constellation. And it takes an intuitive to find these things. It really does. I was drawn to this area. I do feel like someone is buried over here as well. Like where that mound is, I think that this was a burial area at one time. And this is similar to like a dolmen almost. You know, it's very similar. And this looks like the slab stone that was on top. Right here, looks like the slab stone that was on top of this dolmen structure. I do think this was a dolmen at one time. And it does look like almost exactly an old... Hey guys, hey Angel, hey Josh, hey my baby. That does look like the Orion constellation. Right here. Very similar to the Orion constellation. Now that is an amazing find. And if you're seeing this live, it's a treat, because usually these videos are only for my patrons. So if you're catching it live, it really is a treat. You can always donate in the chat room to support me. And donations over $40 will be getting something in the mail if they send me their address. This does look like an ancient structure here. Now also today, I want to talk about something very powerful. And it's about sacred sites and sacred monuments, and sacred structures being linked to resurrection miracles to convert the masses. And yeah, this does look like the sacrificial stone right here, a slab stone, or the top of the dolmen right here. The slab, definitely. And I do believe it was on top of these right here. And this right here, in my opinion, is an ancient Orion constellation right there. That is the Orion constellation. That is the archer, the hunter of Orion, the hunter of giants. You can see it, the arrow going out. See the arrow going out? Everything, the Orion, the man, everything going out. So, if you guys have seen my work or been following my work, and hopefully the video is not choppy right now, you guys have heard me talk about this spot and having the Marian Madonna slash Isis slash Ceres slash goddess of 1,000 names, her having the pentagram on her neck. Now, if that was just a one-off, I would say maybe it's just here. Maybe it's just that they did this here. It's it was used here. So you could see her, the giant Mary, up there. Now I'm gonna reveal to you the pentagram that was put on her neck. But let's talk a little bit about the throat area and how this is all linked together and what I've discovered. Now, of course, the throat area is where you come up with speech, right? The power of the spoken word. And this is how we... Good morning, Malik. And this is from the power of the throat, the mantra comes, right? Spells and the power of the thought, and that's released through the spoken word. All has to do with the throat area, right? All has to do with this throat area. And now we have the pentagram here right on the throat. And in Kabbalah, Ruach HaKodesh means divine inspiration without thought, where you speak without even thinking. It's put to you. It's given to you. And this is also the Vav in Kabbalah. It's what the elements that control breath, speech, and your air that comes into your body and that's spoken out of you. Now, to have the pentagram on the throat area is powerful. That means it's tapping into what's spoken out of the mouth. And what's spoken with the Virgin Mary? Yes, the rosary. The rosary, one of the most powerful spells, mantras, and workings in our world. The Catholic Church is very, very powerful. There's millions and millions, if not billions, of followers who chant the rosary every day. And here we have the Marian Madonna, who has many rosaries attached to her. We have the sorrowful mysteries, the joyful mysteries. We have the Stations of the Cross. We have all sorts of Mary mantras or spells that they chant, prayers, right, or spells. And that's coming from the throat area. So having the pentagram and the mark on the throat is very powerful. It's controlling the mantras. Even Padre Pio, he would talk about, go get me my weapon. What was he talking about when he said, go get me my weapon? Go get me my rosaries. They were literally his weapon for spiritual combat. And when you chant the rosary, you're chanting the rosary either to battle forces or to ask for something. It's spellcraft, it's witchcraft. You know, you're chanting to the Queen of the Heavens because you want a favor, or because you're battling evil. You know, there's different reasons for this. Now, if this was the only place that there's some sort of magic or occult activity associated with the throat, then I would say, hey, it's just a one-off, right? It's just here. But no, there is way more to this story, my friends. Way more to this story. And you see, we have various places on our planet that are attached to the Virgin Mary or the Marian Madonna and the throat area. Yes, that is very interesting. I've talked about that, the rose moon, and the roses are associated with Marian Madonna anyway. The rose portals. The rose portals on the Notre Dame cathedrals are designed for access and communication with these other realms. And I talked about how Madonna is being used in these rituals everywhere. Yes, the rose opens portals. It's a direct communication with other worlds. And there's specific alchemical ancient geometry that ancient Persian mathematicians were employed to even make those rose portal windows. Now, let's talk about the throat area and the Virgin Mary for a second. Now, in December of 1531, right, we had Our Lady, if you want to call her Marian Madonna, if you want to call her Isis, whatever, she appeared to an Indian, Juan Diego. Now, Juan Diego in 1531 was a peasant, and this was in Guadalupe, Mexico City. And This was over 450 years ago, right? So she appeared to Juan Diego and asked him to build a chapel in her honor. He goes down to the bishops. Uh, he climbed a mountain to meet this woman. I mean, he was hearing singing on the mountainside, and he had to climb the mountain, and she appears to him. And Mary not only produced miracles by giving this guy Juan Diego an arm full of roses that do not bloom on that mountainside. It's a barren hillside of Tepeyac. It's a place that is now a suburb of Mexico City, and it was also a place of one of the most intense miracles of all time. And this is Juan Diego, and she handed him roses, but for her to hand him the roses, he had to take off his tilma, his cloak that he was wearing, a very old peasant burlap cloak, or it's like they call them tilmas. So Juan gave her the tilma so she could put these beautiful roses in, and handed it back to him. But when he brought that back to the bishop in the church, on Juan's tilma, there was a cape like, which is like, this cape like garment, that's worn by Aztecs. She imprinted this beautiful, amazing image, it's almost like it was photographed on his tilma of herself, of this Marian Madonna. And not only that, but she even told him, because he was saying he was in a rush to go back to his uncle. She even told him, you don't have to rush, that your uncle's going to be cured. He's not going to die. So the bishop ended up accepting these signs by seeing this tilma and everything else, the roses, and his uncle's cure, everything, and the portrait. That is, let me remind you that I'm not going to go into this portrait too much now, but it's a portrait that no artist can duplicate, and no artist can explain, especially in the eyes. The eyes have an image of the people that were actually there when that tilma was unfolded and unrolled. It has an imprint of what was seen. So now let's get to the part that has to do with the throat. Because what does this have to do with the throat, right? Well, there was going to be a huge procession, a huge parade in honor of this experience, right? So they had this huge procession, and they were gonna they took the image from the chapel of from the shrine, and they only made this structure in about 2 weeks. So during this parade, they had everybody there. They had Hernando Cortez. They had who was the ruler and conqueror of Mexico at the time. They have many notables of Spain there. And when the procession arrived at this chapel, a mass was celebrated with all the conquistadors, the conquerors, and even the natives. They were all there conquering. All the conquerors were there embracing each other before this altar, right? So basically, there was a procession, right there. And when it arrived at the chapel, a mass was celebrated with all of these guys. And they said that right here was where the seeds of a new nation were sown. Where it actually, a nation who would be eventually known as Mexico, actually broke bread in a way. They got together and made friends in front of this. And not only that, but the miracle that was about to take place sealed their fate, sealed their conversion, and sealed Mexico becoming a place. I mean, this is a place that took land. Whenever these are made for reasons, these miracles are designed for reasons, for conversions and to conquer land. So during this procession outside, during this parade, some of the Indians were celebrating with having their native instruments and all of their native symbolic dances going on. So one Indian, during these rituals and these symbolic dances that were taking place, one Indian was accidentally and fatally shot in the neck with an arrow. Right through the neck in the arrow. Right where this mark is on the Marion that you stand before you right there, that's 60 something feet tall. She has a mark on that same spot with a pentagram. Now, this guy was fatally shot in the neck with an arrow. And of course, now grief has enchanted the crowd, interrupted the joy of the parade, because this guy was just shot dead with an arrow right in front of this procession, right in front of the chapel, right in front of the Virgin of Guadalupe, right? So, with grief totally consuming the crowd, they basically brought the dead Indian guy to the new shrine and laid him down there in front of the Virgin of Guadalupe. They removed this arrow, and then they confidently implored Marian Madonna to restore him to life. They knew, they had this sort of confidence among them all in the crowd that she would resurrect this guy from the dead. And like I said, they pulled out the arrow, and all of a sudden they say, like, from people being the jubilation of the crowd magnified, it got even greater, because they removed this arrow, right? And they put this guy there, and then the Marian Madonna resurrected him from the dead. The Indian got up on his feet, and then the jubilation was even magnified, even greater than before, as everyone began to dance and praise Mary. And afterwards, a large painting was made depicting many of the prominent figures participating in this parade, this festival, including the resurrected Indian. So it's like documented pictures of this taking place. And this painting can be seen in the Basilica of Guadalupe, where, millions, thousands and millions of people every day go there to see the image of this and the miraculous image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. You see all the Mexicans, even if you go in California, they're everywhere, on the back of cars, on people's shirts. It has enchanted and been imprinted on the minds everywhere. Now, according to our laws of nature, this image of the Virgin, or the Marian Madonna, on a coarse cactus cloth should have disintegrated many, many, many centuries ago. But it stays intact. Especially, it was even exposed. It's in a glass case now, but for a long time, for hundreds of years, it wasn't even in that glass case. It was exposed. They've had rockets hit that church. They've had fires hit that church. But this painting has never been disturbed. And it's been scientifically demonstrated that the eyes of this image of Our Lady contain the reflected image of Juan Diego and the other people that were around him when this thing was unveiled. And it's sort of like a photograph, not a painting, within the eyes. And you could see a lot of information about this. So that's one, right? You got this Mary standing before me with the pentagram on her throat. And then you have this Virgin of Guadalupe statue. And somebody being resurrected from the dead after being shot through the throat with an arrow. Now, that's a mighty coincidence, don't you think? A very coincidence, right? And so it's not just a one-off. We have something there associated with this. Now, let's go even further. Let's take this a step further. Now, standing before us here, right here, is the Black Madonna. Right? This is the Black Madonna. So there is a Black Madonna in different places on our planet, right? So another place that we go where there's this Black Madonna that has things associated with the throat of Marian Madonna is in Czestochowa, Poland. Now, this is where they're famous for the Black Madonna. Pope Pius XI, he had been the apostolic nuncio to Poland, right? So he had got himself an amazing copy of the image of Our Lady of Czestochowa, the Black Madonna, and placed it in the Vatican Chapel as sort of like a memento his time that he was in Poland, right? So during the Second World War, there were Polish jet pilots, fighter pilots, right? And they were with the British Air Force. I think it's called the Royal Air Force, and they would keep an image of this same Lady of Chiricahua in their, bomber squadron. So the Madonna's face in this picture is dark. It's therefore, called the Black Madonna. But it has two scars on it. In 1430, there was a sacrilegious swordsman of the Hussites. The Hussites, I think they were called. They were like a heretical order who had slashed at the original picture. So he slashed this picture and scarred it on the throat. Now, there is also a scar on the throat from a Tartar's arrow that when they came, they went into the action, they took action, they went into the castle of Bells, and they shot this picture right through the throat with a Tartar's arrow. Now they say, when an artist during the reign of Jaggiello retouched this portrait, that these scars, these marks, always reappeared after they painted over them. Despite how many times he would try, they would always reappear. Now apparently, Our Lady, or Isis, wants people to remember the throat area and all the sorrows and resurrections and mantras associated with it, to let everybody know that she is their mother, that their souls belong to her, and she understands their sorrows, she understands their suffering, she understands what they want and need, and you chant to her for it. And this is why it's associated with that area. Now there's more we're along with this, but first, let me first show you what I'm talking about, in case this is the first time you're seeing me talk about this area. Now, I've been the only one in the world that's made this public. Now, if you see, I don't know if the sun's on my side or not today, but you see when we go close, you can see the pentagram on her throat in the same area of the arrows. Hold on, let me get closer because the chat room keeps popping up where I can't. So see? You could see. Right there. It's faded, but there is a pentagram on her throat. Clear as day. And this is because of the mantras that are chanted. This is because your breath, your voice that comes out of the throat area. This is powerful. And she is the Rosary Madonna, and you can see that it was blessed. She is the Black Madonna, the Black Rosary Madonna, and with her star-based platform, her star pentacle platform, she's rising out of a star, just like the Statue of Liberty, which is Ceres, the goddess Ceres, which is one of the two gods of the earth. The two main deities of our earth is Ceres, or Demeter, or Mary, and Dionysus, or Bacchus. Now these are seven sisters of the Pleiades. Now these are the two main gods of earth. You have Dionysus, or Bacchus, and you have Ceres, or Demeter. And you can see that we have all of these associated with our area here. Now, right before me here, speaking of Dionysus, or Bacchus, he is the one who resurrects from the dead. Resurrects from the dead with no arms. Now we have right before us here, yeah, that's blue jays. They have a nest right here. So you see, these are all the mantras of Mary too, right outside of her, standing around me in white marble spirits in stone. These are all the mantras of Mary. The gloryful mysteries, the sorrowful mysteries, the stations of the cross. They're all right here. This is Prayer Park. Now you'll see right here is the Ascension, when Dionysus rises from the dead with no arms. Even depicted with no arms here. Doesn't seem too Catholic to me, does it? Dionysus, who was torn apart by titans. Then he was thrown in boiling water with herbs and eaten by the giants. And then he was resurrected from the dead in the trunk of a tree. By Apollyon. Now, it would be amazing. It would be amazing now if that was the only stories of and history of the throat area, right? We have Poland, and we have all these things in Mexico City, right? And right here in New York now. But it goes even further with this Poland, because not only was that picture, that portrait, every time they tried to remove the scars from the throat, they would reappear. But there's actually people that were resurrected from the dead from this statue, and even some of them that had throat injuries and things like that. And this is like intense when you start to go through it, because there is so much that I can relate to you guys that has to do with this throat area as well. And you know, there's like I could do a whole couple of hours about on this. It's really intense, you know. And I'll give you an example. In 1540, and this has to do with Our Lady of Czestochowa in Poland, and the scars on the throat of the portrait. Now in 1540 there was a really gruesome event that left an intense imprinted memory, a lasting memory among the inhabitants of Lublin, which is a few miles in Poland from Jasna. Now, Marcin Lanio, he was an operator of a slaughterhouse in that area. He went to a town for sort of like a shopping tour. He went to go to the town to shop, right? And he had to go through a few stores. So he went into the town for a sort of a shopping tour. So his wife left her kitchen, you know, momentarily to borrow some yeast from one of her neighbors. So she needed this yeast for the batter she was about to bake in her large oven, they say. So she left her two youngsters at home. One was only 4, and who had watched often. He had watched the other butchers in the area slaughter the livestock in the yard. So he decided to imitate them while his mother was gone. He wanted to imitate these butchers, and he has, of course, a child's mind, and really can't fathom how dangerous what he was going to do. And the nearest and most convenient victim would be his little brother, Casio, who was age 2, who was sleeping peacefully in a nearby crib. Now, I believe a dark aspect of this goddess that was resurrecting people from the dead just for conversions, just to claim sacred sites, enchanted this young boy, lured him to kill, so there could be even more resurrections and conversions. So he wanted to mimic these butchers. He wanted to slice. So sleeping peacefully in his nearby crib, without even realizing the consequences, like he was divinely inspired, he took a sharp knife and slashed the throat of his oblivious, innocent brother laying in bed. Seeing the blood rush out of his brother's throat, he realized that something intense and bad had happened. He awoke from the enchantment. Overcome with his fear, overcome with his dread of punishment, he hid inside of the large baker's oven, left open by his mother. Now, within a few moments, the unsuspecting mother had returned, and not hearing her children playing, she assumed they had fallen asleep. So she finished preparing the batter and started the log fire in the oven where the boy hid. Now, this poor child, suddenly realizing his terrible situation he was in, began to scream in agony. The mother's blood froze. Realizing where the boy was, she finally managed to pull him out, but the boy had already suffocated in the smoke-filled oven. He lay lifeless in her arms. As the mother, seemingly to be paralyzed, looked about, she suddenly realized the tragedy. Her eyes sees her other son slain and blood soaked in his crib. The double shock was too much for this lady. Too much. She couldn't handle it, this poor woman. She became demented. She struck her head against the wall, they say. She pulled at her hair. She tore her clothes to shreds. She became like a mad, demon-infested woman. Now her husband, unsuspecting of what's going on, he comes home and he walks in on this dreadful sight. And he sees his wife in this condition with two corpses around him. Two corpses of his sons, his only sons. He didn't pause to think. Divinely inspired, with no thought at all. And, apparently thinking that his wife had killed them both, he grabbed a nearby axe and crushed her skull with one blow, thinking that she killed his children. Then, after a little while, his mind cleared and he realized what he'd done, and fear seized him. In the meantime, the neighbors and friends were gathering with mixed emotions outside, and some with pious advice. So this guy seems to have this heavenly, divine inspiration, and he turned with desire and hope to Our Lady of Chiricahua, the Black Madonna, to whom he's been devoted for many, many years. And by now, all the neighbors had arrived outside. They're standing in shock. They're standing in amazement at the triple tragedy that just took place. 3 corpses. Their astonishment grew as this guy Marcin, he silently and determinedly loaded his 3 corpses of his family into the wagon, made the sign of the cross, and turned the horses towards Jasnagora to go to Our Lady of Chiricahua. Some watched in fear, others watched in tears as he left. So Marcin journeyed in silence to Jasnagora, with people assembling along the roadside, seeing him so focused straight forward as they saw or heard of the strange sight of a man with 3 dead people. 3 dead people around him. Now, think about this for a second. Think about what we're dealing with here and what's going on. This is pretty intense. Now, as Marcin came to this shrine, they say several kind of people showed up. All different people showed up, and they basically helped him take these 3 caskets and carry them into the chapel. Now, Marcin remained at the door, pleading with the entering faithful people to pray to the Madonna, pray for his family, because he felt too guilty to go inside. So inside the shrine There was a devout priest inside. I think his name is Aporowski or something like that. Now, he was conducting a benediction of the Most Blessed Sacrament. And the portrait of the Black Madonna is high above his altar while he's doing this. And they say it seemed to glow with heavenly splendor. And this guy, this priest, and all the congregation joined in the prayers for this poor husband and his family and his dead family. And these 3 dead caskets lay out before this lady of Chesapeake, and the mother and 2 little boys were a piteous sight. It was really horrible. Her skull was crushed. Everything was going on. Now, they say that all the congregation sang the Blessed Mother's hymn, sang the mantra, the Magnificat. This is a Blessed Mother's hymn. And it's a supernatural feeling had penetrated this chapel. Her mantra was resurrecting from the dead. And they say that at the words, because they say that he who is mighty has done great things to me, and holy is his name, a shock came over this congregation. 3 lifeless corpses came to life and slowly rose from their places. For a moment, there was a seemingly age-long silence in this church. There came a spontaneous outburst, and all joined in a thanksgiving hymn to the Madonna. Husband, wife, and children had a marvelous reunion. They say that fame of this tremendous miracle spread worldwide. The emperor ordered a true copy of the miraculous portrait of Our Lady of Chesapeake to be made and placed in the Cathedral of Vienna. Copies of this portrait, they say, should be also placed in many homes and in public places, just as the Poles, many in America, love Our Lady of Jasna, just like they do in Poland. And in the faith of the Poles in Poland, they were, everyone that's Catholic prays to this. And the Bright Hill Sanctuary of Our Lady of Jasna and Jasna. I mean, think about this. All 3 corpses got up out of their caskets and had a reunion. Even the one that had her skull crushed by her husband. Now, how is this possible? What are we talking about here? I mean, what's actually taking place here? I mean, this is serious stuff that we all need to re-examine.